Jason Aaron, James Stoke, and Ed McGuinness continue exploring the Heroes Reborn universe as Dr. Spectrum finds himself battling Rocket Raccoon, the deadliest bounty hunter in the galaxy who has been tasked by the Watcher and the Kree and Skrull empires to bring down the insane lawman before he destroys more of the cosmos. Jason Aaron, again channeling the DC Universe, tackles his Green Lantern pastiche as Dr. Spectrum battles Rocket Raccoon, who is filling in for Lobo in this story. Again, I really enjoyed the world building Aaron does for this issue, exploring more of the space side of things and all of the weird and wonderful changes that Heroes Reborn has brought upon the Marvel Universe, focusing on how Spectrum has essentially become the ruler of all space, all on behalf of America. It's full of fun references to events of the past, which obviously we can't read about since they don't actually exist in comics that don't actually exist, but I do love that the book acts like they do and that you can actually go and pick up an issue of Dr. Spectrum from the 80s to catch up on what's been happening. On top of that, the actual Heroes Reborn story has its biggest revelations revealed since the first issue. The two biggest ones being, of course, the Starbrand child is now grown up and has full access to her powers, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing converge with Blade and Captain America's stuff with the Phoenix Force. The other big one is obviously Mephisto is behind changing this universe, something I think most of us already knew, but I love that it's all but confirmed here with President Coulson and Spectrum praying to Mephisto. James Stoke and Ed McGuinness continue to tell this strange story, and boy does James's work actually suit the rainbow-coloured hero and weird space monsters really well. I thoroughly enjoyed how weird and wonderful the book got with its designs, like a Groot gun and Rocket being turned into a living cancer in all its gross glory. Ed McGuinness meanwhile continues his backup stories, exploring more of the Starbrand, giving the character a simple yet really awesome looking costume, and a fun new Groot design to make him look kind of older and kind of fatherly, which makes sense given he's the father figure to the Starbrand. Heroes Reborn issue 4 was another fun romp through the Heroes Reborn universe, this time providing the biggest connection to the overall Reborn plot since the first issue, beginning to showcase the cracks in Coulson's universe through some fantastic looking artwork and action. I'm going to give this issue a 9.5 out of 10. Heroes Reborn issue 4 heads to the blue area of the moon where the Kree and Skrull empires meet despite their eons of warring with one another, finally agreeing with each other on one thing, knowing they endorse this murder. They ask the person brought before him if he can help them, and the being says that he's worked around every dark corner of the cosmos and hasn't found anything he can't put a bullet in. The being is revealed to be a battle-hardened Rocket Raccoon and his Groot gun, who says the aliens have better have his money ready since he will bring the head of the Earth lawman to them. Groot says his name, with Rocket translating saying the gun wants to know what this lawman did to make them angry and if the stories about him are true. The Watcher says they are true since he knows them all and he witnessed his atrocities until he couldn't stand by any longer, looking to intercede in what the man was doing, and in doing so he had his eyes gouged out, so now today he brought them together so they can stand in agreement that Dr. Spectrum must die. Dr. Spectrum meanwhile battles Thanos, blasting his hand apart with the Infinity Rings. He tosses the villain back into nowhere, the celestial Spectrum killed years prior when he decided they weren't gods and he was the only god, and he's American. He knows that many of his villains, from Super Skrulls to Inhumans to Beta Ray Bill, all reside in the Black Site prison, but there are always some new hell roaring around the corner of the galaxy. Rocket appears, attacking the hero, who quickly uses his prism to blow up the missiles the raccoon fires at him, knowing this is supposed to be Rocket Raccoon, the deadliest bounty hunter in the galaxy, which he finds hard to believe. Rocket knows that he will believe it before he dies as the Groot gun fires, spewing forth little Groots which invade Dr. Spectrum's shields and attach to his body, covering the hero and choking him as he calls for his prism. Rocket tells Groot to rip him apart as he finds the prism, wondering what it is, thinking crazy old man Quill will pay him for it. Joseph says that the prism is his as Rocket unleashes his maggot gun, whose flesh-eating maggots tear at Joseph's exposed skin. Rocket tells Groot to rip the man's head off and let the maggots finish him up as he tries to grab at the prism, but it shoots down into Joseph's head, exploding in his Spectrum power that kills off all of the Groots and the maggots. Dr. Spectrum blasts Rocket and the Groot gun, which disintegrates in Rocket's arms, as Dr. Spectrum says there is a reason there are no more Kree accusers or Black Novas or or Starjammer pirates, and he is the reason space will someday be safe for God-fearing Americans to travel in. Dr. Spectrum conjures up a gun, trying to shoot Rocket with it, but Rocket says killing his gun doesn't matter since he's got more, quietly contacting the mothership and saying he's got no more guns, wanting all the antimatter mines and negabombs on board to be fired at his position. Suddenly something begins happening to Rocket, which he doesn't want to happen, saying that she shouldn't have sent her power. It's too late as Dr. Spectrum arrives from behind the rock to find Rocket has been given the Starbrand power, which he unleashes on the hero. Dr. Spectrum remembers interrogating Ego about someone who had unlawfully left Earth in a ship, wanting to know who it was. Ego says that it was the Wakandans, but Spectrum knows he's lying, planning on dunking him in a black hole to see if his memory is refreshed. Back in the present, Dr. Spectrum knows the Starbrand shouldn't exist in this reality, having tossed the original owner of the power into the negative zone. He demands to know how Rocket got it, but Rocket says that he shouldn't be asking that. He should be asking the bounty hunter what happens when a guy whose best friend was a machine gun does with a cosmic power. Rocket builds a giant cannon, firing at the hero who easily slices through the energy, saying that he's killed a star before and done many things which Rocket will never understand or believe, like the Necro system of reality 10011, which he absorbed into his prism and can let out whenever he wants to. He unleashes the Cancerverse onto Rocket, morphing the raccoon into a monstrous pile of gore that Dr. Spectrum crushes into the ground, finding Rocket never gave up who hired him even when his face melts off, with Rocket only talking about his favorite starship. Elsewhere in the galaxy, Mothership Guardian implements its Raccoon Down protocol, playing a pre-recorded message from Rocket to the young Starbrand girl, with the message telling her to stay hidden, and it's like he said since the day he found her as a crying star baby, that someday she's going to save the whole galaxy and she'll know when that happens. Back on Earth, Joseph meets with President Coulson in a church, telling his master that the Watcher was the one who hired Rocket, and he'll deal with the intergalactic scumbags soon, something Coulson knows he definitely will. Joseph hesitates to mention something, but Coulson reminds him that they are in the house of their lord and he can speak freely. Joseph says that Blur recently talked about something going wrong in a recent squad meeting, knowing the world he saw beyond it looked like reality was tampered with. Coulson finds it interesting, wondering what Joseph thinks about it, but Joseph says that it sounds like nonsense, since as Dr. Spectrum sees the cosmic tapestry every day. He gives the priest with a collection tray that comes by a $10 note which says, "In Mephisto we trust," as Ledger knows that if something is wrong, he would know. Coulson looks at the statue of Mephisto in the church, knowing nothing would get by his Dr. Spectrum. In the past, the Starbrand baby floats through space, soon spotted by Groot and Rocket from their ship, but Rocket thinks it's just some skull trap and they won't fall for it. Groot, however, has already grabbed the baby, bringing it aboard despite Rocket's protest that this isn't something badass bounty hunters do. In the present, Rocket's death message plays out as the Starbrand child rockets away from the ship, demanding Groot take her to Earth. Groot knows that he cannot do that, but Starbrand says that she's done hiding in space and she's old enough to know the whole universe is broken and the Starbrand is the only one who can fix it. Groot knows that doing so will get people killed, and the girl says as much, but knows that stars do that, they burn things, but this time she'll burn only bad things. She demands to be taken to Earth, and if Groot won't, the Starbrand will show her the way, knowing the first thing she does when she gets back to Earth is to find Dr. Spectrum. Suddenly a Wakandan ship appears in space and Captain Okoye hails the girl, sending out a message to the Wakandan Space Command and telling them that they have found the Starbrand.